Unit 4, Day 5 notes. Today we're going to have a brief lesson over isosceles and equilateral triangles. An isosceles triangle, just to recap, has at least two congruent sides and two congruent angles. The congruent sides are called the legs. The congruent angles are called the base angles. The vertex is the angle between the two legs. So just to recap, the congruent sides are called the legs. The congruent angles are called the base angle. And the vertex angle is located between the two legs. If you have a right isosceles triangle, what would be the measure of each base angle? So let's draw this situation. All right, so again, we have a right isosceles triangle. So each leg is congruent. Our job is to figure out the measure of each base angle. We know that, for instance, let's say each base angle right now is x, because we don't know it, so it's unknown, so let's give it a variable. We know that we take x plus 90 would give us 180 degrees, because that's the sum of all the angles of a triangle. So that means 2x's plus 90 is equal to 180. Subtract 90, that means 2x should equal 90. Divided by 2 would give you x equals 45. So each base angle would have to be 45 degrees. So that is a special isosceles triangle, a 45, 45, 90 degree right triangle. Add that to your toolbox, because that's very important to remember. Now let's talk about equilateral triangles. You got to remember that equilateral triangles have three congruent sides, and it has three congruent angles. Since they have to be three congruent angles equaling to 180 degrees, each angle would have to be 60 degrees. Always, always, and always. Therefore, an equilateral triangle will always be isosceles, because isosceles means at least two or two or more. And an equilateral triangle will always be equiangular. All three angles will always be 60 and acute and congruent. Don't forget those facts. So a equilateral triangle will always have three congruent sides and three congruent angles that measure 60 degrees. So now let's practice with a few problems with either an isosceles or an equilateral triangle. In number 1, we have triangle STV. And since I see two congruent angles, that means that these two sides, SV, is congruent with TV. because they're across from the congruent base angles. So this is an isosceles triangle. So I know that SV is equal to TV. So to find x, I would put 2x plus 6 equal to 3x minus 6 and continue to go. I would subtract 2x from both sides. It would give me 6 equals 3x. Sorry, 6 equals x. As I was saying, I subtracted 2x from both sides, so I had 6 equals x minus 6. Then I would add 6 to both sides, so you would get 12 is equal to x. Number 2, it shows one 60-degree angle and two sides are congruent. So that means the sides across from those two congruent, the angles across from those two congruent sides are congruent. And if I were to do the math, calling these x, I would discover that 2x plus 60 equals 180, which would leave me with 2x equals 120. So x equals 60. So this is an equilateral triangle because all the angles are 60 degrees. So since this is an equilateral triangle, that means all the sides are the same. I probably shouldn't have called my angles x, but oh well. Too late now. Now I can actually solve for the x in the original problem by taking x z and equaling it to yz, because again, it's an equilateral triangle, so all three sides are the same. So that means 3x plus 8 is equal to 4x minus 4. Subtract 3x from both sides, you would get 8 equals x minus 4. And then add 4 to both sides, you would get 12 equals x. Look at that. 12 equaled x on both problems. Well, this concludes your notes for today. Please take a picture and submit.